number 1, that has been published on September 28, 2020. This journal consists of collection of research papers and articles written by professionals and academicians in the field of linguistics and culture. It is a peer-reviewed blind journal, and then all publications in the journal are open access, which allows articles to be freely available online without any subscription. The Journal of Culture and Lingua, or Culingua, publishes papers periodically 3 times a year, namely in January, May, and September. So we invite all of the academicians to send a research papers, conceptual articles, and even research report to be published on the journal Cultural and Lingua. Ladies and gentlemen, the manuscript can be sent at any time with notification 1 until 2 weeks. The entire journal business process uses the OJS system, and then for this journal, we use the OJS 3. And the user can always monitor the progress of the manuscript at any time. Dear Mr. Rector, ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate the spirits of lecturers, students, or researchers to participate in this webinar. For this, we can see the total number of registered participants reached more than 300, consists of lecturers, postgraduate students, Strata 2 and Strata 3, as well as undergraduate students from Indonesia. For example, from Jakarta, Medan, Semarang, Surabaya, Bandung, and other cities. And also they come from overseas like Pakistan, Australia, Malaysia, and Philippines. We have a big dream actually to make this journal to be international reputable journal Scopus Index. Perhaps it is very hard, yeah, it is very hard to make the dream come true, but inshallah, by doing hard work, this can happen with the support, of course, by all of the academicians or researchers that send the articles to our journal. Amin. Alhamdulillah, luckily we can publish actually the journal on 28 September 2020. Then you can see on the website of Culingua.bunghatta.ac.id. Just click the link, and you can see the current issue is the first volume of the Journal of Culture and Lingua, or the code sign is Culingua. This journal published 5 articles written by researchers from different universities in Indonesia. These 5 articles include topics that deals with a range of linguistic branches in terms of semantics, sociolinguistic, semiopragmatic, and second language acquisition that present innovative and thought-provoking findings in the field. The featured articles in this volume were written by Professor Setiono Sugiharto from Faculty of Education and Languages, Doctoral Program of Applied English Linguistics at Majaya Catholic University of Indonesia, Professor Agustina and Liza Alimatul Humaira, with their affiliation at Indonesian Department Universitas Negeri Padang, Padang, Indonesia, and Dr. Susi Deliani and friends, yeah, Sutikno and Sahril from University Muslim Nusantara Al-Wasliyah and Balai Bahasa Nur Sumatra. and also Muhammad Ade and Lilia Zahra Asifa from Indonesian Department, Universitas Negeri Padang, Padang, Indonesia, and also from Prodi Sastra Inggris itself, ya, Novarina, Yusri Dayanti, and Haikal Idham. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the publication of this journal is inseparable, of course, from the hope of many people, especially our gratitude to the reviewers who have been willing to work hard in reviewing the manuscript, giving in valuable comments, advice, and counsel so that it is worthy of publication in this journal. We also appreciate the researchers who have made the Culingua journal as a medium for the publication of their research result. We hope that this issue of the journal gives our readers valuable insight into linguistic research carried out in different contexts throughout the world. This issue could not have been made without the meticulous work by our editor's team, Pak Budi Sunario, STMD, and Ibu Temi Tamrin, PhD, and our great and experienced reviewers, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we hope that the manuscript in the Culingua journal can enrich our knowledge and scientific insight, especially in the study of language and culture in multi-context and multi-discipline. We still hope for the constructive criticism and suggestions for the improvement of this journal. As editor-in-chief, I would like to thank all those who have supported and helped organizing this journal published. Mr. Rector of Bunghatta University, LPPM Universitas Bunghatta, who facilitate all things related to the publishing of Culingua. Last not least, we express our sincere gratitude to all reviewers who will play a role in the next future. They are Diana Citra Hasan, PhD, Dr. Aviandri Emhum, and then also Professor Dr. Setiono Sugiharto, Dr. Bambang Widi Pratolo from Universitas Ahmad Dahlan Yogyakarta, Professor Dr. Enzaim from Universitas Negeri Padang, Padang Sumatera Barat, West Sumatra, Associate Professor Ahmar Mabub, University of Sydney, Australia, and then also Professor Stephanie Samila Pillay from University of Malaya, Malaysia. Professor Stephanie feels sorry that she cannot join our webinar today because she also has the same agenda in the same time. And then also Dr. Surya Suryadi from University of Leiden, Holland, and lalu Nurul Yakin, PhD from University of Gunung Rinjani, and also Afrianto Daud, PhD from Universitas Riau Pekanbaru, Indonesia. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's all.
The time is yours.
Terima kasih, Pak Dedi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
As Director of Universitas Bunghatta, I would like to welcome our eminent speakers, namely Associate Professor Ahmar Mahmud from University of Sydney, Australia, Professor Dr. Setiono Sugiharto from Unika Atmajaya, Jakarta, and Professor Dr. Hendra Suherman from Universitas Bunghatta, Padang. I would also like to welcome all university staff and our beloved students, as well as all participants for their valuable participation in this international webinar on writing research and conceptual article for international journal, techniques, and strategies. As we all know, the success of any academic institution relies not only on teaching, but also, and more importantly, on quality research and publication in well-known international peer-reviewed journals. Publication allows not only an institution to do well in ranking, but it also allows researchers to improve their knowledge and build a strong and reliable network of peers. The lack of proper training on research and publication techniques and strategies is among the difficulties faced by researchers in several universities in Indonesia. So, therefore, this webinar is the perfect platform to remediate this shortcoming. The theme of this webinar is very crucial to our university, as it would encourage and enable our lecturer to conduct research based on reputed international standard and publish the result of the studies in reputed international journals. I hope that everyone makes the best of this event. Congratulations to the organizing committee for the effort in making this webinar possible.
Thank you.
Thank for Diana, Dr. Diana Citra, and also Dr. Yusrita Yanti.
Thank you.
I hereby declare this conference officially open. Thank you for your kind attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we end the opening section, let me take a picture together. So all of the participants, please activate the camera and show the greatest smile. Okay, maybe all of the participants, please activate the camera because we will take a picture together. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
There are 6.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, and so the greatest smile. For the next slide, once more. 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all of the opening section. I'm Dedi Irawan, as the master of ceremony, say thank you for your attention. After this, we move to the main section of this webinar. The discussion section will be led by Mem Tami Tamrin, PhD. For Mem Tami Tamrin, PhD, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dedi. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable Bapak Rektor Universitas Bunghatta, Profesor Dr. Tabdil Husni, SMBA. The Honorable Bapak Vice Rector 1 for the Academic Affairs, Bapak Rektor 2 for the Finance and Financial Affairs, and Ibu Diana Citra Hasan as the Head of English Department, Ibu Dr. Yusrita Yanti as the Honorable Chief Editor, Cultural Lingua Journal. Our special speakers, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Mabo. Welcome, to Bunghatta University again, Ahmad. Profesor Setiono Sugiharto. Selamat pagi, Pak Setiono. And Professor Hendra Suherman from Bunghatta University. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this our webinar series about writing a research and conceptual article for international journal Technique and Strategy held by English Department of Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Bunghatta. My name is Temi Tamrin. I will be your moderator today. In this occasion, we shall have outstanding presentation from our prominent presenters, whom I believe shall enrich our insight and knowledge regarding the theme of this webinar. Before presentation begin, allow me to introduce the presenters. Our first presenters only first, and then the next one I let Ahmad present the presentation, and then later I will also read the CV of the second presenter. First presenter, Associate Professor Ahmad Mahbub from the University of Sydney. Dr. Ahmad Mahbub earned his PhD at Indiana University, Bloomington in 2003. The title of his dissertation was Status of Non-Native English Speakers as ESL Teachers in the United States. Ahmad is keenly interested in the application of language sciences to development issues. His primary research interest is on an examination of policies, practices, and implication of language variation in local and global context. In pursuing this goal, Ahmad drew from the contribute to a range of linguistic and applied linguistic tradition, theories, and methodologies. In 2019, Dr. Ahmad Mahbub was named as Australia Research Field Leader, English Language and Literature in the Australian Research Magazine. Ahmad has already published books, lots of books, edited 9 books, writing 50 book chapters, published 37 journals, as editor of 7 journals, keynote speakers in many conferences, published many articles in newspaper and magazine, doing research report and many more publications. Please correct me if I'm not correct, Ahmad. Okay, for the first time, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Associated Professor Ahmad Mahbub, will deliver a presentation. Time is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you all of my colleagues here, those who are in administrative positions, those who are in teaching and research positions, and those who are training to become researchers and teachers or other members of our community. So thank you again for taking time out to be here. Now, I realize that this is actually quite an important event because you're launching a new journal. Now, why do we launch a new journal? We launch a new journal, there must be a reason, right? Why would we want to put in so much time and energy and money into doing something? We must believe it's a good thing. And I can hear that from your speeches this morning that we are doing something good. I agree that we are, but I also have a fear that we are misguided and misdirected in how we are doing it. So hopefully in the session today, I will be able to challenge some of the ways in which we are currently thinking of creating research papers and journals and going to suggest alternative ways of doing them and why we need to think of these alternative ways. Now, before I actually start my presentation, I just sent a link through the chat group. It's an essay that I published only about a week ago. And it's called Regaining Balance, Rethinking Knowledge Making. Now, in this essay, it's a very short essay, about 1,500 words, and it includes a poem. Yusrita, you were talking to me about my publications, and I was sort of giggling. You know, it's really interesting. I'm not very, it's like books and things I'm never really interested in after a long time. my publications that I get most excited about are the poetry, because they just capture a different audience in a different way. So the essay includes a poem to help us think about and conceptualize some of the things that we are talking about here today in different ways. Because in many contexts, academic ways of using language are very restricted and very restrictive in what we can talk about and how we can talk about it. So because of those restrictions of the genre, we are trapped by the genres. And so sometimes it's better to escape those genres and write differently. So for you guys who are setting up a new journal, I think your journal would be a great place. It actually accepts and recognizes diversity, a diversity in the ways in which people do research and present research, not necessarily the ways that are, deemed as being quality by a certain group of academics, usually based out of North America or Europe or some Western context. And they are the rule setters or the trend setters, and everybody is expected to follow them, right? So that's why you're thinking a Scopus review. Why? Because the Scopus is what's ranked. So you can see how these ranking systems that are not our creation, we don't create these ranking systems. We are not part of much in making of these ranking systems. These are made somewhere else by somebody else, but we have to follow them, of course, because we are not making them. They're not necessarily designed for us. And so often we get trapped into this notion that we have to meet all these criteria. And in this criteria, one of the criteria, as you will know, of course, is journals and publishing journals. And I understand that's why people want to publish journals. In addition, you don't want to publish a journal, but you want it to be indexed, a Scopus indexed, ISI indexed, whatever the index is. You want it indexed. Why? Because it's a ranking measure. Why? Because it's a ranking measure. Why? Because ranking matters. Ranking. That's the real reason why we are doing research. Let's not, none of us would be doing research if it was not required by our jobs. None of us would be doing research if it was not required by our institution. If we did not have any carrots, if we didn't know that after we do this research, we will get a PhD and we will get a job, or after I finish this research paper and get it published in an ISI journal, then I will get so many dollars or so many currency of some kind. You have carrots. We are being driven by carrots, and the carrots are either ranking or money. Those are the carrots that are driving us to creating and establishing these new kind of journals. I would like us to take a pause here and ask us, is that ethical? Is that an ethical thing to be doing? Yes, it is getting us into a rat race, but the rat race is taking us nowhere, right? The essay that I shared, I've just shared the link, it questions how European academia makes knowledge, all of it. It doesn't matter which discipline, whether it is sciences or social sciences, it makes no difference. They all create knowledge in exactly the same way. I've explained that in this essay, and I've explained why they do it, and I've explained what the consequences are. So if we continue to produce the kind of knowledge which does not bring benefits to our communities, now we know that, we don't need to name any places, but we have all been to places where we wonder, how can people live here? It's so noisy, it's so dirty, there's so much pollution, the water is not clean, there is crime, there's so much oppression, the police is so strict, hundreds of different reasons. But we have been to these places and some of us live in those places. And we must ask ourselves, how is the knowledge that we are creating? How is the work that we are doing? The number of hours, I am not going to even question the amount of work you do. I know that you guys work much harder than perhaps I do. I live in the bush, which is, I'm actually right now, if I show you outside the window, it's kind of, it's very windy, so I'm not outside, but I'm actually in Cooktown. And I am doing this talk from my motorhome. So this is where I live. So this is my home, and I live in my motorhome, and I live in the bush. And that's why I go by the name Prof. Nomad. And I learn from nature and observation of the nature. And I living in the bush for a long time makes you realize how the cities and the kind of knowledge that we make in urban universities without understanding the world, basing our writing, basing our research on only research papers, readings only reading and thinking we are creating new knowledge. Well, if you come out, you will see that we're not creating new knowledge. We are destroying the natural world. We are destroying it. You can, we don't have to be rocket scientists to understand that, you know, over the last 300 years, so-called scientific revolution of different types. Please don't turn on the presentation yet. Please don't turn on the PowerPoint. Can you please cancel the PowerPoint? I will turn it on when I need to.
But Temi, I think, yeah, Ahmad asked you to
I will
close.
do it when I'm ready. I'm not ready there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
I see.
I'm
So
just
still.
before we get there, right? I'm
Okay.
giving you the context. So this is the context in which this journal is being set up. We are in a particular context. We are at a particular point in time where we are seeing the oppression is increasing. You know, in the past, I loved coming to Bunghatta. I loved the food there. You know, I loved spending time with all of you and with nature. But notice we cannot do that anymore. Our mobility is constrained. With the mobility constraint, we will have even more dependency on somebody else giving us the knowledge. We are dependent on knowledge of others. We are dependent on the categories of knowledge of others. And if we continue to pursue that through our journals and our academia, we will not help, you know, harmonize our people and our communities. We will continue to contribute to the exploitation of the land, the people, and the environment, and everything that lives in it. That is the context that we live in. This is what we need to change through our work. So to do that, we need to do certain kind of work. Can you please enable screen sharing? Okay. I will now screen my, yeah, can you please
Bu Temi, time for, yeah, time to share.
No, please don't start it. I will start it. Please don't do it. Run it yourself. I will run it. Can you please
so you will.
share,
Okay.
enable share screen? So yes, please.
Okay.
You don't play that. Please, I will do it. Let me do it. Okay. Because I'm going to do it at a particular pace. I know what I'm going to do. And it's, thank you. So if I can enable, if you can enable screen sharing, you have to go into the setting and give me the ability to share my screen.
Already?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, yes, I have it. Okay, great. All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
All right, so you guys can see my screen now, right? Good.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the session that I'm calling it Project Reports as Subaltern Practice. Notice I'm talking about project reports, not research papers. And I'll talk about why. In a summary, in a nutshell, you know, research papers require us to base our work on reading and reading and reading and reading, primarily reading or certain types of data collection, very strongly manipulated and managed. That's it. That doesn't help because that research doesn't create an understanding of how things work in the world or how we can apply our learning to do things in the world. To do that, we need to do things. We need to take action. We need to have practice. When we have practice, when we are doing things, when we're creating things, then we will create certain things that will be available for everybody to see in the world because you have created it, you have done it. Once you have created it, once you have done it, that's when you write the project report. We want project reports, not research papers. We want people to do things that are good and then tell us how they have done it. Tell us how they use language in order to educate and people about the endangered plant life in their area, and how did they use language and social semiotics to create signage and material that help people to help the native environment and not disturb it. Are we doing that? Are our students creating that material? If they're creating it, we should be able to see it. Are our students making material, and are we creating material that will help reduce the rate of smoking? Are those visible around us? If not, our students are not doing it. So what is happening? We are not getting our students to do things that our community needs. We want them to do those things and then report on them. That's project report. Now notice, a number of these new ranking systems don't rank research per se. Yeah, publication in aspect of it. It's not research necessarily, it's publication. And also notice, publication typically is only about 30% of the ranking, if that. There's a very large chunk of ranking systems which are based on community involvement and community impact. That is where we need to focus on, because that bit of chunking of ranking system is open. We can do so much. Use that aspect of the ranking system the one where we focus on community benefit, do that work, and then write it up as project report. Then you have publications that will be, forget Scopus and ISI, it will be the stuff people want. And when people want things, that is the respect, that is the ranking, nothing else. That's what really matters. Okay, so keep this in mind. Now I'll start, as I start a lot of my sessions, with a poem. And I've already sort of been going on for a while, but let me just read this poem. Leaving the promises behind, I choose to retreat into the woods, to listen, to learn, to unlearn.
Okay.
Now, I wrote these lines when I was living in the bush, but also as a response to, do you know that poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening? It's by this American poet, his name will come back to me. But yeah, and the name will come back to me. But it's a poem, a beautiful poem about, I want, no, what was it? The woods are lovely, dark and green, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, or something like that. Right? Notice in his poem, he creates an image of a beautiful forest, but the forest is owned by a person who lives in a town. The question is, how can you own a forest and you don't even live in the forest? How is ownership of a forest even possible? These poetry that we learn in school and through our English programs and English curricula, they come loaded with certain ideologies and ways of looking at the world. So for example, normalization of ownership of land. It's normalized in our world today. But just think about it, our ancestors in your part of the world and my part of the world, land ownership didn't exist. It came in with the Europeans. And they normalized it through their literature and their research and their knowledge building, so that everywhere we have this craze for owning land. This is crazy, because land is a finite resource. Everybody can't just keep doing that. And yet that's the way the system has been built. And notice how our knowledge building is an infinite goal. Any goal that is infinite is by definition unachievable. So knowledge is infinite. You can never achieve all of it. Right? So if you make knowledge a goal, just like if you make money your goal, these are infinite things. You will never achieve them. They're endless. And in trying to do that, you will destroy what you have. And observe, that's what's happening in our world today. Wherever you find that people have set up infinite goals, there is chaos and disarray, right? So if knowledge is the goal, if money is the goal, if power is the goal, these are all infinite. So make finite the goal. Unlearn the things that we have been taught, the greed of the infinite. The greed of the infinite doesn't help. Focus on the finite. Focus on the finite, and the things around you. Help stabilize them through your action and through your work, through your actual activities. Once you have done that, then write about it. And then once you write, that writing will be worth it. This will be satisfying for you. It will be easier to write. Why will it be easier to write? Because you don't have to synthesize other people's theories and stuff. You have to base it on experience and doing things, which you have done. So the process of writing becomes easier. You don't get the same sort of problems that you have in academic writing, which we know is a painful thing. It just goes away. That pain goes away because you're no longer writing stuff that you don't understand or you don't know. You've only thought about it because you read something. You have never experienced it, and you may never experience it, right? And yet we are we are forced to construct knowledge on these things that we can never observe or experience. How good can our knowledge really be? So why is it that our scholars often cannot get a Scopus or ISI rankings? It's not because we don't work hard. It's because we are misguided in what we are doing. And if we fix our directions, then the amount of that work that you guys put in, if you decrease it by 50%, put in half the work that you're putting now, you will realize you can actually achieve way much more. And that well-being and prosperity that you will experience in your community and where you live will be a real physically lived experience. It's not something that lives in the imagination. So coming back doing this, and that's why it's important to think about and think about looking at project reports. So why project reports? I'll go through this very quickly. So because project reports are based on doings and actions, not just research. When you do things, when you take action, you learn from them. Doing an action makes a difference. Project reports are texts that show how and why a project was carried out and with what results, right? So it's telling us doing things, teach us to do things. I need to fix things in my backyard. If you teach me how to do it, create a video, create a YouTube, write a short thing, doesn't have to be 25 pages, short and simple and easy, with clear directions, I will go and do my gardening in the back because I watched you. Guess what? You spent the time that you put in has brought results, not just in your backyard, but my backyard, right? That's the idea, sharing how to do things better and learning from each other so that we can slow down and harmonize the societies that we live in, reduce the conflict, reduce the greed for the, the infinite. Now, project reports provide examples and ideas for others people to try. I might read something you have done in Bunghatta and I say, wow, that's so amazing. I should try doing it in some other place, right? So your work gives me ideas of what I can do. That's beautiful. That's real inspiration. Then, and importantly, project reports work really well with what I call the credible approach. Now, I have talked about the credible approach in multiple different places, so I won't go through it in detail. Just a quick summary. Credible is an acronym. It means that project is driven, it has to be contextually relevant, that is, think locally. It responds to practical needs. You don't start with a literature review. Literature is there to help you, it's not your goal, it's your resource or support, right? It's your focus, your goal is to attend to and respond to a practical need. You engage stakeholders, not just collect data. People in your community are not just people who should fill out surveys because you need it. That's unethical. Instead, think of them as fellow human beings, as your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your relatives and your family and your herd, your group of people who are all going to live in harmony. And to create harmonization, you engage with people, you talk to people. So today, this morning, for those of you who are my Facebook friends, I posted a video from where I am, Cooktown. Just down the road, there was a Saturday morning market. And I took a video and there was a guy there playing music and collecting some money. He's now my friend. Why? Because after he played the music, I went up and I talked to him and engaging him. He's my stakeholder. Why? Because the work we are doing is to use knowledge building to harmonize the world around us instead of creating the oppression that we are experiencing right now, right? The need to publish papers is oppressive. We don't need that oppression. We need to spend that time and energy doing something beneficial and good and positive. And then that will give us the positive energy. And that's the positive energy that you work back into the system and you write a paper. My stakeholders are all of you and everybody on the street because we all live in the same world. I talk to everybody on the street. That's why I go by Prof. Nomad. Everybody, you engage with your stakeholders, you make friends with them, you connect with them. They're not data. They're not your subjects. We are teachers. Teachers are role models. Teachers are guides. Teachers are mentors. Teachers are not data collectors. Think about it. The ethics of research and what we need to do. In doing this, we need to really need to understand local knowledge and practices. Pay attention to the local beliefs and their practices and their expressions and how it works. And best a researcher is one who works in their own community because they are the insider. They are part of it. And they will have trust of the people. So that's why I keep saying, think locally. How will you have trust in somebody who's foreign that you don't really know? Especially you don't even know, you only have read a book. How do you know what a person is like if all you have done is read their book? Very often people get very disappointed when they meet the author because they have thought the author of something, but they're not. So imagine that when you realize that this person is really like this, do you still have faith in the work they're producing? How can we have faith in the work? We need to know the person, we need to know the work to be able to understand and observe and make a decision based on our engagement with people. And that is done locally, right? Because that is respected. And that work that you produce in response to it, your community members will respect you for it. And that's much more important than any recognition by a journal or a ranking system. It's the respect of your own community. That's the most important thing, right? In doing this, of course, we are informed by diverse approaches and experiences, not just Western. Look everywhere, not just your own country, your own context, look everywhere. It doesn't matter where. You never know what you will find where. And I'll give you an example of it when I finish this talk. Benefits local communities. If your project doesn't benefit, don't do it. It has to benefit. Imagine we spend how many years of our life doing a PhD? I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of life spent doing a PhD. Who benefits from the PhD? Who? Even the author of it doesn't. You get a job perhaps, or publication and get some money and get a title, but who's benefiting from it? All the work, all the hours of work that you did, who's benefiting from it? I would think that a plumber or a carpenter who spends 1 year instead of 3 years and makes the furniture we need, we sleep on it and we sit on it and we eat on it and we live in it. Whereas 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of an academic life gone, nothing to show for it. Why? Because of the kind of knowledge we're producing, it's rotten. Read that article and you will see why it's rotten. Forget that, fix your things, we need to all fix our own homes. If we can all fix our own homes, we will be okay. We just need to do it ourselves in our places. And as you're doing this, you will guess what nobody else would have done what you're doing, right? Nobody else would have done in Bunghatta what you have done. And therefore, you're the lead. And that's it. Nobody else can do it because you are living there. You're the local, right? And that's contribution, that linking, that sharing, then creates the traditional, recreates the indigenous bonds that used to exist between all of us and have been broken by the divisive nature of Western academia and its approaches to knowledge making. And if we reverse that and rethink indigenously, rethink harmonizing, not peace. Notice I don't like the word peace. I don't use peace. Why? Peace is an absence of conflict, which means conflict is always a possibility, right? Peace and a conflict are always together. They're not good because you don't want that. Instead, think harmony. Harmony doesn't need peace or conflict. It's harmony. A forest is a harmonic system, ecosystem. It's a harmony in it. Yes, it's true that certain animals in a forest will become prey and will be eaten, and other animals will eat. That's true. But notice, nothing in the forest goes hungry. The forest as a whole is an ecosystem. That's sort of a thing we need to think of, the harmony. Rethinking harmony building. How does harmony happen? How do we build harmony? And how do we do it? Through taking action, because action changes the harmony. Now, this, if you guys do music, you will understand this quite well as well through music. Now, of course, if you're doing this, and as we've been talking, ethics is the principal, basic starting point for us. In fact, we are questioning the Western knowledge making because it is unethical. And therefore, our response is to create an ethical knowledge production. And ethical knowledge production is one that is beneficial to everybody and does not bring harm to anyone, right? And does not harm anybody. That's very important. Now, how do you do this sort of stuff? I've written about this in different places. There's this thing I called a practical guide to doing positive discourse analysis, not critical discourse analysis, positive discourse analysis. Why positive? Because just like in critical discourse analysis, we are looking for samples of texts or examples that went wrong or there was something wrong with them. And by studying them, we analyze what was wrong with it. I'm cringing just thinking about it because it leaves you frustrated. It leaves you angry. It leaves you frustrated. It leaves you upset. It's like, oh, the world is so bad. The world is so bad. The world is so bad. Everybody is pointing out the problems. And we create this horrible atmosphere of negativity through that. So I encourage doing positive discourse analysis. Look at examples of positive things, good things that have happened in the world, things that people are doing which are making a big difference. Look at those projects and study those and study how they do good things. And by studying good things, we can do good things. Right now, we study bad things, so we do bad things. Let's study good things so that we can do good things. Simple, right? Very simple relationship. That's it. In nature, things work very simply. The complexity is somewhere else. Nature is simple. You just have to live in it, right? Now, In doing this, notice earlier on I said, don't do a literature review. So because we are all stuck in this idea of the literature review. And in fact, if you're doing a PhD or a master's or dissertation or a research project, sometimes your lecturers and teachers say, you have to have a gap in the literature. Show me a gap in the literature. If you cannot show a gap in the literature, you cannot do this project. We are all forced into creating gaps in literature. I won't name names, but I know many of us, including myself, sometimes just create that gap because it needs to be created, because otherwise you will not get published or you won't get marked.
Mm.
So notice we are making people do certain things because we demand certain things. Just pause for a second. How do we expect anybody, including ourselves, to know all the literature that there is about something? We can't. And to have that ability to evaluate it, imagine you're a student, you don't have that evaluative framework. People who have been working 50 years, 60 years, they have the experience to be able to evaluate things. Somebody who's starting off doesn't have that experience or doesn't have that ability to do it. And forcing them to create these gaps makes them create gaps. That's why their research is poor. It's poorly conceptualized based on literature review. It's a horrible thing. Please stop doing literature reviews and stop doing finding a gap, and stop recommend to your colleagues to stop doing it as well. It is not helpful. Instead, think about the literature review in a whole different way. I've given you the link here. This is a text called How to Write a Literature Review for Project Development. This is a workbook. Okay, it's a workbook that I created with my students. So my students did the work. So this also is an example of what I'm talking about. Work with your students to create resources that other students and teachers can use, right? So we learned the theory, but we didn't learn the theory. We learned it by applying it. We applied it to create a resource, a workbook. And of course, when you create something, you understand the theory because the theory is only there to explain and help. And if the theory is not helpful, you throw it away. You find what you need to. If you cannot find it, you put it together yourself, you make it yourself. There is no restrictions on it. Do it for your own sake, for your own goals. Literature review is not restricted to written text in English in Scopus journals. No. A lot of the examples that I get in my writing come from people who have never even gone to school. It is their experience in life and their practical wisdom of having survived to live until 40 years of age in a very difficult environment. That wisdom and experience does not exist in a peer-reviewed, double-blind, peer-reviewed article. How can it? How can you compare the wisdom of a person who lives in the present and exists because they have to survive every day of their life? How can you compare that wisdom to something that is written based on a reading of 20 articles? Do you see the problem? The very nature of a research article is the problem. We don't want research articles. Research articles are our end. They are horrible things. They're painful to write. We don't get reviewers. It's hard to get published. And once we get published, nobody reads them. It's a waste of time and resources for what? No reason, no benefit. So change it. Focus on literature review for project development. That's a whole different way of thinking about literature review. I won't go into it. It's there. You can read it for free. It's all there. So once you've done this, you write a research project. So how do you write a research project? I'll tell you, it's very easy. There is no fixed way of doing it because each report has to be based on what you do. How can I tell you to structure it? You structure it based on what you did. Right? But in general, I can tell you what information it should include. It should include the goals of the project, right? Why was the project needed? What information was gathered prior to designing and implementing the process? What did you gather? It doesn't matter if it's books or it's grandmother's stories. It makes no difference. They're all valuable sources and we respect them all. When and where was the project carried out? How was the material designed? How was the project implemented? What were some of the key outcomes of the project? What suggestions do you have for someone else who wants to carry out a similar project? That's it. If you have done the project, you can write this in 2 hours. You have everything in your head. And then you include where appropriate copies of links of materials and things. include the links, and that's it. On your way. It can be short and sweet, doesn't need to be 25 pages. It can have more pictures and links to videos than it needs text. It doesn't need text. It needs to be simple. You can see things. You know, when you do things, your things are observable. When we create research, research is not observable. There is no way for you to go into and find out if the research paper that you're reading is actually honest. You just cannot do it. It's an impossibility because you cannot transplant yourself in another place and time. You cannot observe everything. You just cannot. So what you have to do instead is trust. Now, if trust is placed well, then okay, perhaps it will be good. But when we place our trust in things that are problematic, then we are in real problem. And notice that we are in a problem. Okay, I'm getting conscious also of time. I'm going to just take a little sip for my coffee. And I'll move on to the last slide, which is actually a poem. So I started with a poem. I'm going to end with this poem. Now, let me give you a bit of the context of this poem. I wrote this poem very recently. You're the first audience that actually is reading it. I've not shared it anywhere. You will notice right now on my screen, the cowboy, right? And I've actually blanked out the number plate because this is the cowboy. I met this cowboy a couple of weeks ago, and this is his story. I just wrote his story down because I thought it was a beautiful metaphor. And you will, as I read this poem to you, you will realize that it is a metaphor of social change. How do you create social change without creating hurt, without hurting yourself and without hurting others? How do you create a reform which is non-violent, which is harmonic? And the answer is in a metaphor from Cowboy Dale. All right, so this is Cowboy Dale in my words. Papa, how do they fix a windmill? Gudu asked as we drove by some farms. Ah, great question. Cowboy Dale told me how. He climbs up 40 feet to a platform, his harness always on for safety. No stop button waits for him. He has to stop the blades himself. Wow, really? That must be scary. How does Cowboy Dale stop them, Papa? Curious Gudu asked. If he puts his hand in, they will be hurt. Gudu imagined as he touched his left arm. So he has to be smart, he has to be fast, and he has to be brave. He focuses on each blade as it shoots close and tries to grab it from the top as it whooshes by. Wow, he can stop it like that by catching it? Gudu wondered. Well, it is a slow process. He said it can take hours to slow down the blades, just enough to stop them before fixing and releasing them. Wow, Papa, Cowboy Dale is so cool. I wonder if I can fix things like him. And I will leave you guys with this point. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, that is very interesting presentation. Yeah, that is a very make our realize that what is the most important thing for the projects. Yeah, so lots of notes that I at a point that I take a note here, but probably we will discuss it later. And let's come to the second presenter. Thank you very much, Ahmad, for the interesting presentation. And then let's come to the second presenter is Professor Setyono Sugiharto from Atmajaya Catholic University. Professor Setyono earned his PhD degree in Applied English Linguistics in Atmajaya Catholic University in 2013 12. At present, he is the head of Master Doctorate Program Graduate School Applied English Linguistics at Majaya Catholic University, Indonesia. He produces many publications and professional experiences. And I believe Professor Sutiono is very productive lecturer, which is the CV of Professor Sutiono consists of 26 pages. So it is very a lot of experience from Professor Sutiono. Professor Sutiono also received cum laude predicate for 3 times for his bachelor, master, and doctoral degree. He published many articles in book chapters, referred journals in local, national, and international scope, book author, opinion, editorial article in newspaper, and also invited speaker in national conference and international conference, guest lecture in national and local university. Okay, please welcome Professor Sutiono Sugiharto. Time is your Prof.
Thank you very much, Ibu Temi. I would like to express my gratitude to all of the participants who are present virtually with all of us today. Thank you also Ibu Yusrita, who invited me. Okay, thank you for the invitations as well to Rector Universitas Bunghatta. Today I would like to share my experience as a non-native speaker of English struggling to publish in the mainstream journals. Ibu, allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Already, Prof. You can share. Already. You can share now.
All right.
Yes.
Thank
okay.
you, Ibu Yusrita.
Yes. You're welcome.
Now, as a non-native speaker of English, I am also struggling hard in order to be able to publish in mainstream journals. Here, I would like to share some of these strategies. These strategies are actually some lessons which I learned from the reviewers of different international journals. Let me now share, first of all, from the articles that I published in international journals of applied linguistics. This is published by John Wiley. This article has just been published in January this year. The second article is also published. This is quite an old article, published in 2015. This in the same journal, but different articles. The next article is published by TESOL Journal. This is also published by John Wiley. And the last article is published in Oxford. This is Applied Linguistics, published by Oxford University Press. Now, if you may look at these articles, you may get the impressions that writing is well structured, writing is well ordered, but in fact, the process was very messy. The process was very painful. The process was not really comfortable. This is basically because we sell, in quote, we sell our knowledge, we show off our knowledge to the reviewers. And mind you, some top tier journals like Applied Linguistics, TESOL, TESOL Journal, and International of Applied Linguistics are tightly gatekept by the reviewers. Now here, as a writer, if we wish to get published in these journals, then we need to struggle. Not only struggle to represent ourselves, but also struggles in how to create, how to produce knowledge which is acceptable to the scholars in the mainstream. Now let me now explain and share some of the comments from the reviewers, which I think can become lesson learned from all of us wishing to publish in these journals. First of all, this is the comments from TESOL Journal. One of the reviewers, at that time I wrote about an article which tried to refute, which tried to clarify some of the arguments which were written by Indonesian scholars. Now, the reviewers of this journal, one of the reviewers says like this: this article appeals to the interests of TESOL journal readership because it shifts discussions on communicative competence from a local context to a more global linguistic level. Now, this is what Professor Ahmar has explained before, contextualizing our knowledge from our locality. But we need to link it to global perspective. Now, the reviewer also says that this article invites TESOL journal readers to question their understanding of communicative competence, as well as practices with communicative language teaching. Therefore, the appeal is that, as the reviewer said, I tried to question the very notions, the very basic understanding of communicative competence, questioning the notions of communicative competence from my own perspective, which is the perspective of locality, my own situation. This is the appeal. In other words, if we wish to write for the journals, international journals, then we need to think the appeals of our articles so that it will be accepted by the reviewers of the journals, by the gatekeepers of the journal. The second reviewer says like this: the article helps relate new scholarship to English language teaching. It makes the readers refine their own CLT pedagogies. Now, of course, when we write for journal publications, particularly in journals, right, we need to read what is new, what is the state of the art. This is what is meant by new scholarship. Even though the notions of communicative language teaching is not new, this is not a new notions, but we can help what we read, the state of the art, the articles of the state of the art, the new scholarship to this old notions of communicative language teaching. This is what makes it make this becomes appealing to the reviewers of the journal. The second thing, the second strategies that I learned from this these three journals, it should be noted, however, that maybe other journals, other reviewers from other journals might have other expectations. But suffice it to say here, these three reviewers, these three journals from TESOL, International Journal of Applied Linguistics and Applied Linguistics, they have this expectation for the writers, for the contributors. The second is article has significance. Now, let's see here what the reviewer says about, one of the reviewers says about the significance of the article. the discussions of situated language learning presented in the article is not new. So as I said before, my topic is not new actually, but I insert something, I inserted inside which is not has not been taught before by the other scholars, by the other writers. And the comments from this reviewer says the article is not new, but the fact that it includes various layers is. Okay. Now, because the context is communicative competence, so I ask the readers to rethink the notions of communicative language teaching, particularly communicative competence, from another perspective, from another look. It means that there are other resources beyond the classroom which can contribute to the language learning process. Therefore, language practitioners should be aware of these resources and benefit from them to facilitate language teaching and to promote language learning. So in other words, the significance lies not just in the notions of communicative competence per se, but there are other perspectives, but there are also other insights that I have contributed. These perspectives are resources which are beyond the classroom setting. This is the significance of the article. Now, the reviewer from another journal, International Journal of Applied Linguistics, has this to say. I revised the article because of the comment, and the reviewer says that the article can be published as it contributes to the agenda of the International Journal of Applied Linguistics, aiming to show how particular perspectives, paradigms influence our reading. Again, I use the context of my own locality, as Professor Ahmar said, that local knowledge, our local knowledge. I situated the concept, I situated certain topics from our locality and link this to global relevance. Now, here is very interesting comments from another journal, another reviewers in applied linguistics. The author counters this perspective. I tried to counter a certain perspective from previous scholars by arguing that periphery scholars adopt resistant tactics to represent voices and knowledge under great odds. And the reviewer goes on to comment, bringing out such tactics from the periphery is very important. So when we try to sell, in quote, our articles to the international publications, then we need to show the reviewers that there are new insights that will not be missing if it's not included in the article, it's not included in the journal. If the journal is not published, then you will miss something. I offer you new perspectives, I offer you new insight which have not been taught before by the other scholars. Now, the reviewer says that this helps teaching and professional development and students as scholars to negotiate established conventions strategically for writing. This is the significance of the article, according to the reviewers. Now, last comments from the TESOL, the second reviewer, is that the article invites readers to reconsider their understanding of the notions of communicative competence and their practices within the context of CLT. And this is important, encourages teachers not to go by what is dictated to them, by drawing attention to the multiple layers of situated language practice. Here, we need to challenge the status quo. actually. So what has been considered established construct, what has been considered as established concept needs to be challenged. Particularly if we are talking about communicative competence, the notions of communicative competence has been associated with Chomskyan's competence. Now, to give fresh insight, to give the significance, to insert the significance of our article, then we need to challenge the status quo by, of course, offering new insights, offering fresh insight. The next point is the article needs to have a global relevance. Again, here I'm basing my points based on the comments from different reviewers from different journals. Now here from the reviewer from International Journal of Applied Linguistics, in line with INJOL, aims, and scope, this article combines empirically grounded position and analysis of a local phenomenon with an exemplary explanation of its global relevance. Again, Professor Amar Mahbub's point is relevance here. Local phenomenon, locality, with exemplary explanation of its global relevance. Then the challenge is how can we connect our local phenomenon with global phenomenon? That is what is expected from the reviewers of this journal, actually. The contribution has the potential to elicit some interesting responses. Now, it's also better for us to consider that our articles, our ideas, our insight may hopefully elicit some responses. From the readers of the journal. Others' point is that articles needs to be written in clear focus and explicit arguments. This is the comments from two reviewers. In all, this paper is very good. However, it needs to focus more on the topic of teacher education. At that time, I wrote about teacher education, and it was not really focused. The focus was not really clear. So the reviewer provided this comment. And I think which is also very valuable comments. Yes. And therefore, I recommend the paper to be revised to reveal how the author relates teacher education and language policy and planning to ELF pedagogy. This is the comments. Now, here again, as I said before, process of writing is messy. It's not very neat. It's very painful because you need to revise and revise. You need to have to reflect what you have written before. You need too often we need to revise. We need to dismiss new the old ideas that we have written. We have to revise it along with the emergence of new ideas. Now here, the reviewer says that the article is messy tidy up and should leave only the bare bones of the argument, avoiding unnecessary repetitions, and importantly, presenting the main point with academic clarity and rigor. This is the expectations that I learned this from these reviewers. Okay, next point is that this is a comment from the reviewer of Applied Linguistics, Oxford publications. I use certain terminologies, and thankfully, the reviewer was very meticulous, and she provided these comments. I use the term tactics. I use certain terminologies, but the reviewer says that these terminologies are very abstract. The notion of tactics that I use in the article are very vague. So here is my arguments that I presented in the article. But the comments from the reviewers that these notions are very abstract. These terminologies are very abstract, and I was advised to make it more specific, so that the articles becomes useful not only for teachers but also for scholars. So this is other strategies that I learned from the reviewers of the journal.
A lot of things.
Yes, article needs to be written in scholarly, well-structured.
Yes.
And the arguments that we need to present needs to be persuasive and convincing. Let's see what the reviewers of the journals has said here. Overall, this paper is scholarly and well written. It presents a convincing argument and integrates well with the theory of critical social science and transformative teacher education. So the lesson learned is that we need to present our ideas orderly, and the arguments needs to be convincing, so that because we are convincing, we try to convince the reviewers of the journal so that our manuscript can be published. I also had one experience when I for the first time my article got rejected from the reviewers. That the comments are that the arguments are not really convincing enough. Okay, so so if we try to write the arguments which are not well supported, which are not which cannot convince the reviewers, chances are that our articles will be outrightly rejected by the reviewers. Now, the comments from the second reviewer of the International Journal of Applied Linguistics here is also is worth noting. The paper is an important positions paper. It does not seem to include the teacher education's aspect of English as a lingua franca in an up-to-date manner. So what does it mean? What does it imply? It implies here that we need to keep abreast of the new development of the topics that we are writing. It doesn't mean that old ideas needs to be totally rejected. No, of course, but there is certainly wisdom from classic works of certain literature review, certain articles written by certain scholars. However, it's advised that we need, of course, to keep abreast with the new development of the topics that we are writing, new insights generated from new studies. So this point is also worth noting when we want to publish our articles in the journals, international journals. Now, how about the reviewing process? I experienced the review process ranging from 6 to 18 months. Now, as I said again, the process is very painful. Please don't get discouraged. If you receive comments, if you receive feedback from the reviewers, don't be discouraged. Certain reviewers are also very, very tough. Very, well, if I might say, some of the comments are quite rude, but please don't get discouraged. Because this is a process. Writing is an ongoing process. Now, in summary, I would say like this: writing for publication is a site of struggle, struggling to represent yourself to the national academic discourse community. struggling to convince the reviewers, struggling to persuade the reviewers, to convince the reviewers that your article is worth publishing. Your article offers new insights, new perspectives. This is a side of struggle. So because journal publications, journal writings, academic journal writing is a tight gatekeeping practices. I see writing for publication as a side of struggle. No less important is that writing is a mode of learning. So when your articles are commented, when your articles are given feedback, then here is the time for you to learn. That here is for you the time to learn from the reviewers. What are the points that needs to be accommodated? What are the points that what are the useful points that you can learn from this feedback and from this comments? Well, of course, you can also defend your positions, because the editors of the journals are also allowed you to defend, are allowed you to clarify your own positions in light of the reviewers' comments and feedback. Okay, now here is the elements of academic writing. This I'm just explaining this briefly because of the time. So here are the elements of academic writing is that disciplinarity, criticality, and positionality. So if you want to be able to write, and if you want to be able to get published, then of course you need to have sound knowledge. You have to have sound knowledge of about what you are going to write. This is disciplinarity. You are engaging yourself in the disciplines. You have sound knowledge with the topics that you want to write. However, you need also to be critical. You are not just simply accepting every arguments. You are not just simply accepting every opinions from the scholars, but you also need to be critical. And you also need to state your own position. If you are being critical, so what? You need to state your position. This is elements of academic writing. Now, academic writing can also be seen as moves. This is particularly important to understand that when you write your draft, then make clear that the territory of your article, the territory of your research is crystal clear, followed by the gap, the niche. If you are doing a research article, then the territory must be crystal clear, and then the gap must be included